For as much as I love DC Comics, I'll be the first one to admit that they can be pretty confusing, and a big reason for that are their infamous reboots. DC has had a reputation for constantly resetting their comic book universe, but that isn't exactly true, especially when you consider that they've only actually done it twice. That being said though, in order to truly understand how all of this nonsense works, let me give you a quick history lesson.
So, the time period when DC Comics first started publishing superheroes is referred to as the Golden Age of Comics. Comic books were everywhere and were one of the most popular entertainment mediums of all time. I mean, sure, the books were pretty goofy by today's standards, but the DC universe had one simple continuity to follow. As time went on though, superheroes stopped being the popular genre of comics. Instead, the industry pivoted to stuff like westerns, war, and horror comics. While mega popular characters like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman were able to be kept in production, lesser selling characters like Jay Garrick as The Flash and Alan Scott as Green Lantern were cancelled. But after some time out of the spotlight, superheroes became popular all over again. Wanting to throw their hat back into the ring, DC decided to relaunch some of their older characters with new science fiction-based origin stories. In fact, the debut of Barry Allen as The Flash is widely considered to be the beginning of the Silver Age of comics. These characters weren't related to the Golden Age incarnations in anything but name. However, when becoming The Flash, we can see that Barry Allen picked this name because he was a fan of the old Jay Garrick comics, which apparently were fictional. It was a cute little acknowledgement to the books that came before, but nothing major. But imagine if you were a comic fan in the 50s. I mean, isn't it weird that Jay Garrick hung out with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, and even though their books never stopped publication, Jay is apparently a fictional character and they're not? Okay, let me run that by you again because yeah, that's a weird concept and really hard to describe. So here's Clark Kent. He's a real person. Here is his friend, Jay Garrick. He is also a real person. But now, if Barry Allen was able to read Jay Garrick comics, that means that Jay is a fictional character, but this Clark is not. Enter The Flash number 123. The Flash of Two Worlds. This classic storyline introduced the concept of the multiverse to DC, explaining that all the Golden Age stories still happened, but on a different universe called Earth 2, whereas all of the Silver Age stories were designated as taking place on Earth 1. Fun fact, according to the editor of The Flash of Two Worlds, Julius Schwartz, the numbers of Earth 1 and Earth 2 got mixed up, so the universes got the wrong numerical designations, but they stuck around regardless. This retroactively meant that the current superhero books just apparently switched from taking place on Earth 2 to Earth 1, and the writers just never mentioned it. For example, Action Comics number 196 took place on Earth 2 with the Golden Age Superman, and literally the next issue took place on Earth 1 with the Silver Age Superman. They're different characters and different universes, but there is no way that you would know that without something like Wikipedia. Are you confused yet? Yeah, a lot of people in the 50s were too, and we'll get around to how DC tried to fix that here in a bit. Anyway, the multiverse was a fantastic playground for writers to explore new concepts that wouldn't make sense in the main continuity. And also, as DC acquired the intellectual property of other comic book publishers, the multiverse made it easy to slot them into the broader DC cosmos by calling them Earth whatever. But as I mentioned, this got just a little complicated, and the continuity was going to need a massive shakeup in order to get things to line up. That's why in 1985, DC launched the iconic crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths. In this book, the entire multiverse was destroyed, leaving one new Earth in its place. This was the first of DC's reboots, as they were able to pick and choose the individual pieces from the newly destroyed multiverse in order to tell stories in one unified continuity. Pretty much all of the redundant versions of characters were scrapped, so now instead of there being two Supermen, there's just one. And some of those IPs from publishers that DC acquired were now able to exist in the same universe as the ones that came before. In order to help better differentiate the new continuity, DC took this opportunity to tell brand new origin stories for several characters, with iconic books like Batman Year One, Man of Steel, and Shazam: The New Beginning. So when you hear people use the terms pre-crisis and post-crisis, this is what they're talking about. Pre-crisis is the old school Earths 1 and 2, and post-crisis is New Earth. So that's pretty simple. Ever since Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC only had one main continuity. I mean, things like alternate timelines and even other universes did begin to pop back into being because stories like what if Superman landed in Gotham City instead of Smallville and became Batman is an easy way to make money. But it was pretty obvious to what the main continuity was and wasn't. And look, I'm not trying to say that New Earth continuity was easy to keep track of. It still fell victim to its fair share of continuity restructures, retcons, and all that kind of stuff, but there was never another full-on reboot. That is, until 2011. Originally designed to just be a fun Flash story, the Flashpoint event was made into a much bigger deal when DC decided to use it as an opportunity to reboot their universe for a second time, with the goal of wiping away the baggage of its confusing continuity so that it would be more palatable to new readers. Additionally, much like Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC could use this reboot as a justification to incorporate elements from other intellectual property that they've acquired over the years. Branded as the New 52 due to DC kicking off this new universe with 52 brand new comic series, this new post-Flashpoint continuity takes place on Earth Zero, better known as Prime Earth. This is not to be confused with Earth Prime though. That's our real world and is a whole different can of worms for a completely different video. The problem though is that the New 52 reboot had a bit of a mixed reception, and lots of longtime comic fans were longing for the era that came before. Between trying to appease devoted comic fans and still be newcomer friendly, writers at DC had a lot of hurdles to overcome. But the end result was that Prime Earth fell victim to the same problems as New Earth before it, and was subject to all sorts of complicated continuity restructures, retcons, and other shenanigans. Like, hey, the pre-Flashpoint Superman is back. Somehow. And now, there are two Supermen. Again. Clearly, DC's plans weren't working, and in 2016, they launched their Rebirth initiative. To more casual audiences who literally just saw the DC universe get reset only 5 years prior, they assumed that Rebirth was yet another reboot. It's not. It's actually a lot more complicated. Okay, so apparently every alternate universe or continuity that has ever existed does still exist, and the Prime Earth that we've been following since the launch of the New 52 is actually the pre-Flashpoint universe, but was manipulated in the background by Dr. Manhattan. You know, from Watchmen. Acting as a sort of in-universe stand-in for DC's editorial staff, Dr. Manhattan realized how he shouldn't have meddled in the affairs of the universe, and he undid a lot of his influence. And as a result, Prime Earth took on qualities and aspects of the pre-Flashpoint continuity. It did not reboot the universe or revert it back to New Earth. We still are focusing on Prime Earth, and it still very much is Prime Earth, but now things are different because comics.
So I hope I made that make at least a little bit of sense, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if this video became instantly invalidated because DC wanted to reboot everything again. But regardless, I'm glad that I at least have this video to link to so I don't have to give all of that big explanations in other videos. And hey, if you're watching this because I linked it from another video, hi, I'm glad to know that this worked. But anyway, if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing or even watching another one? And if you liked big cosmic DC shenanigans, well, I actually have a video that explains every single one of DC's crisis events in one nice, easy place, so maybe go give that a watch. But anyway, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time.